Welcome everyone to another episode of Tales of the LGBTQ+. My name is Douglas Parsons. If this is your second or more time that you've come to our YouTube site, maybe now is the time for you to hit subscribe. Those subscription levels do help us in many different ways, so a simple click would be fantastic if you can at this time. Or if you are listening through the podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please put a like there, as well as perhaps some type of review. Those reviews do help us as it does affect the algorithms, as well as how often Apple and Spotify will push the content of our show. They are your stories. So thank you very much. Now, I do want you to immediately watch today's interview. But if you have not watched last week's interview with Pam Hofmann, perhaps you should start there, because that is part one of this three-part story that we are telling this month, Pride Month, here on Tales of the LGBTQ+. If you watched last week's episode, I know that you fell in love, or you fell in love even more with Pam Hofmann, part of the famous duo. Now, there were a lot of questions that have come my way via private message on Facebook or through my email account, which is Tales, T-A-L-E-S, LGBTQ, P-L-U-S @gmail.com. Those comments and questions were full of love and wanting to know more of the story. Well, that's why we have Pam here this week, and also why next week Pam and Karen come together to answer your questions, as well as for us to flesh out more of their story. Your questions, well, at least some of them, will be answered today in Pam's interview. If they don't get answered today, write me again, or for the first time, write me, and I'll be sure to get through as many of those questions during the time period I have. Now, we've spent time talking about Karen. We have to talk about Pam. It's not difficult to say that Pam and Karen seem to me at many times the same person. They are so close. If you see Karen, Pam is a few steps away, and vice versa. However, in telling this story, we do have to remember that they are completely different people with similar but different views in life, and their life experience before coming together was very different. Pam today fleshes out her side, or her view of what I see as the greatest love story. Now, Pam grew up in Los Angeles, California, and in grade 9, she met this cute boy in her debate class, the very same day as John F. Kennedy's assassination. That's right, 2 momentous events took place that day. Pam realized that she kind of liked this boy, and oh my gosh, this is a soulmate. It's rare to have that feeling. They do eventually get married, they have kids, and they have been married for 53 years. The difference is that the person she married had the secret of being transgender. And during those days, the words, the feelings, the conversation were not there. In many ways, Karen felt like she was an alien. Pam, of course, is dealing with these ups and downs, not only with the relationship and navigating this course with her soulmate, her cherished loved one, but she's also experiencing health issues later on, etc. All of which Pam goes into great detail in today's conversation. There were things that Pam mentioned that I already knew, and then there were some others that I did not. And I did have goosebumps. So, again, enough with me yammering. If you have met Pam before, you know that she is a godsend and she is love personified. Today on Tales of the LGBTQ+, let's have the rest of you as well be introduced to the fantastic Pam Hofmann. That's today on Tales of the LGBTQ+, and that conversation begins right now. Hi, Pam. How are you today?
Doing quite well, thank you, Doug. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Anytime I get to spend with you, I am completely happy. Today is a relatively nice Sunday afternoon, and I get to kick back and chat with one of my favorite people. So I'm more than happy.
Thank you very much. I have my cup of tea, and we're all set.
Last week on Tales of the LGBTQ+, the longer form interviews, I had a chat with your wife, Karen. And today I get to spend time with you. And so for our listeners, I just want everybody to be reminded that Pam and Karen have been legally married now for 53 years.
1968.
1968. And their story began before that. Karen was in grade 10, Pam grade 9 in Los Angeles, California, when the two of them met. And they have lived this amazing life, the ultimate love story, I believe. But I have to start with the all-consuming question. We have this long acronym for the LGBTQ plus community. Where the heck do you fit in with that community, that acronym? How do you identify?
Either the Q for queer, which means different, or the plus. Pansexual, cisgender. I love Karen. And as our daughter says, same sweetie, different rapper. So she's the one I'm in love with. So whatever the presentation is, it's her. So that's who it is. I'm not interested in anybody else. If God forbid something happens to her, I think I've been married long enough to one person. That I'll be loved and enjoyed by everybody afterwards, and that's fine. But right now, it's just Karen. So Q, seems to fit, and or the plus.
If it doesn't make sense for any of our viewers, then there's research to be done. And so that's all that matters. As long as it makes sense to you, that's all I care about, that's for sure. You were born in the United States, and you lived your entire upbringing in the Los Angeles area, I believe.
Yeah, I was born in Watts shortly before my dad went back to university at USC. And then we moved out to a suburb of LA called Monterey Park in the San Gabriel Valley, about 90 minutes drive west of Disneyland. So that'll place it for some people right next to East LA. We'll place it for a bunch of others. So I'm a born California girl, and I started high school in 1963 and went to the debate club. Sounded like something I'd be interested in. I like to discuss things. And we had to take a debate or theater or public speaking option as mandatory. So I ended up in debate. And there was this cute guy who I looked at from afar, was a year ahead of me. And then that was that on the debate team. And then President Kennedy gets shot in November. And it had been a debate tournament scheduled for that weekend. And over the PA system, the debate team was called to the coach's room. And she tells us that since we're excused from the rest of school for the afternoon anyway, she had commandeered one of the few TVs in the school. Remember, this is 1963. So in a school of 2,400, there may have been a half dozen TVs. And so she said, stay here and make history, watch history being made. And so I talked with my teammates and people I knew, and then everybody else gathered, and then I saw this cutie walk by. And oh my, and then just left it at that. And that was the day we really met.
Yeah, and so on that day, two important dates in history of two very different actions, but two momentous occasions. You mentioned this guy, and of course that guy had a name, but at this time now in our lives, that's now a dead name, that's a name in the past. Can you tell us more about why dead names are in fact dead names, and tell us a little bit more when it comes to that part before we move on with your love story?
Because somebody who's trans is stuck inside this body, not of their choosing, their whole soul is hidden behind brick wall, armor, clay, that's something that suffocates them down to their deepest soul. And they're doing their damnedest to stay alive. And they're stuck with a name not of their choosing. And they're just, it doesn't repel them, but it doesn't reflect who they are. And because it's combined with this shell that they're stuck in, that it's disheartening, it's soul deadening to use that name beyond the time of their when the shell cracks, the walls open, and the person inside is able to be manifested and be who they really are. Because gender can't be changed. That's what's in your brain. That's one of the first things that is made organically, technically, biologically, when an ovum meets a sperm. The brain is the first thing done. That can't be changed. The sex comes along later. That can be played with. When a doctor looks at this newborn, bits and pieces aren't all right, the doctor takes a guess. And this person is stuck with that guess for the rest of their life, even if it doesn't fit biologically. And so the dead name is representative of a time of deep, deep soul darkness. And so, if at all possible, you don't use it after the person's rebirth or true birth comes. And in our case, so Karen came out publicly in 2002. And so the name, I don't know if she talked about the name she chose.
She did.
It was really nice. I thought it was great. And so there was no problem with, the only things I may flip and flop. I may use the male pronoun when I'm talking about life prior to Karen, because that was this person prior. And then, but after it's been Karen, and it's she. So does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It gives us at least that context here as well, especially as when people are listening to the story of both Karen and yourself, as they're opening their minds, opening their souls, understanding the pronouns being used, the lack of a name being given from before to Karen. So if myself, I've only known Karen as Karen. So my reference point is Karen. And so, although this story involves Pam meeting this young guy, my questions, of course, are going to come with the name Karen because that's who I know her as well. So here we are, the day of Kennedy's assassination. You see this cute guy. Who approaches whom first?
I probably approached her because she was very, very shy. And we just struck up a conversation about what was going on. And not much more than that. We each had our own circle of friends. At that point, the crowd that we began to hang around with was just beginning to identify itself because team members could be across grade. You were partnered with somebody for your personal team when you went off and did your debating. So we were just beginning to chat. And then just gradually, the bunch of us coalesced into a group of friends as well as debate team. And then the two of us eventually just paired off and became more than friends.
Yeah, and to give some historical context to all this, this is before Stonewall, so before liberation. Here in Canada, this was before Pierre Elliott Trudeau said that it was no one's business to be in people's bedrooms. And the first actual picket or protest with people like Randolph Wicker and others were just taking place at this time. So LGBTQ plus conversations were not being had. So Karen is coming into this world with only a few references. Did you yourself have any references to gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender?
No, I knew people existed like this. There was in our grocery store, there was I'm the eldest in the family. So of course I sort of helped my mom do a lot of the household stuff. There was one male couple who we'd occasionally see shopping, and my mother would say, "Isn't that cute?" And I thought, what's the big deal? Two guys are shopping together. But my mother, this is the time when you called Brazil nuts nigger toes. And so at the same time, we had all these people coming into our home. My parents had friends of all races, all colors. My cousin eventually married somebody from Japan. My parents valued everybody. They came at the table, they sat, they were welcomed, they were in our family, and they just couldn't connect between that this word would apply to a person. Through the debate team, I learned that, the word gypsy and somebody being gypped, there was a connection. But in those days, remember, I was born in 49, I grew up in the 50s, this is the early 60s. There was no conversations about that. If it hadn't been for a superb debate coach who wanted her whole team to realize when you use certain words, Indian giver was another one. This is what you're saying about a whole group of people. This isn't right. And I'd bring that home and, Mom would say, get me the bunch of nuts. And I said, Mom, do you realize what you're saying? That's not right. Is there another word we could use for these things? And she looked at me as, oh, yeah, you're right. And I don't remember her using the word again. It clicked.
It's fantastic that you had such a teacher that was so enlightened, especially at that time, because those conversations weren't being had. Do you remember the name of the teacher?
Miss Jewel Bridges. She's legendary. She was about 6 foot before you add 3-inch spike heels, and she weighed over 300 pounds. Our teams rated nationally in the National Forensic League. We were some of the top teams in the state and in the country. Jewel was, Bridgie was what we called her, was legendary at that point in every sense of the word. She probably would have loved drag shows as well. An incredible woman. As far as we knew, never married. She was missed to us. If anyone of all of our friends from the past, we've never heard anyone say a bad word about her. She was a woman way ahead of her time.
I'm glad that we've been able to give a name and honor her, because she set the stage for both of you.
In fact, she was one of the few people who recognized the two of us as a couple. And yes, it was a match. When we married at 19 and 20, she was at the wedding, as well as a couple of other of our school teachers. And she was one of the first ones to say that this is a couple and it's a real.
So you mentioned how you had this burgeoning friends group and you just so happened to be coming together. Karen talked about her side of the story about the both of you coming together. Let's hear your side. When did you know that there was something up here with this relationship that's forming with this person? When did you know that you had met your soulmate?
Well, I think when we go through grade 9, I go through grade 9, I'm meeting all these new people, and I'm feeling very a sense of belonging with my new group of friends. And things just slowly, go along. And then in grade 10, I knew I was going to need help with math and biology. My brain is English, history, the big thing. All through my elementary years, my younger brother helped me with math. I didn't stop counting on my fingers, I think, until I was 35. I'm on the autism spectrum as well. And if I'm going to get a tutor, I knew I'm going to need help. I didn't want Matt to do it, my brother. And so I figured, aha. So I approach the cutie and ask for if he would mind coming over to help me with my homework. And he said yes. So my marks went up. I think hers might have gone down, but she did help me academically. And so we spent some time together, and that's how it slowly developed from there.
When would it be that you two both officially became a couple? Was that in grade 10 for you, 11, 12? When did that take place?
Okay. I was dating somebody else at the beginning of grade 10, and Karen was looking at somebody else. I thought she was involved with, she was looking at this other person with puppy dog eyes. And I was annoyed with this other person who was also a friend. And I said, well, just make him happy. I don't care. I feel bad that he's not happy. And so that was probably the beginning of grade 10. By the end of grade 10, we were dating. And so first of all, it was the thought of, well, in between boyfriends, I like this person. let's see what happens. I'm not thinking in terms of anything permanent. I'm 15 at this point. And, but then the more we talk, we do a lot of talking. Karen was a latchkey kid, and my mom was stay at home, and my grandmother lived with us. And Karen's first language was German, and my grandmother was from south of Czechoslovakia, and the Jews there spoke German. The Sudetenland, which was, Hitler sort of went after them because they were theoretically German. Anyway, so he could talk to Grandma, and Grandma really liked him. And so he spent all this time over at our house. And my siblings, liked him enough to tease him. And we became more and more comfortable. And we just, we'd walk down the street to the park, and we just talk and talk and talk. And, he was the first one to take me seriously as a human being. The fact I was a girl was irrelevant. I felt everybody else seemed to see me as either somebody to do what they needed me to do, somebody who wanted me to be somebody else who I wasn't. And this was the first person who wanted to know about me, who wanted to know what I thought about things, who was interested in important things about the world and about philosophy, was interested in going to a museum or a library. So we just talked. And over time, I realized that not only did I want this person as my boyfriend, I wanted this person around permanently. So I'd say by the time I was 16, I knew that this was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. When Karen graduated high school, remember I'm a year younger, so she went off, and my parents said, "We know you're in love, but you really haven't dated that many people yet. Do us a favor, he's not here anyway. Will you go out?" So I said, "Okay, fine." The last year in high school, nobody would take me out because I was Karen's girl. My first year at college, Cal State LA, I didn't sit home. There were a lot of nice guys. I said, "Look, I'm in love with somebody in Canada, but I'm not married yet. I will pay my own way. Where are we going?" I went out with, my parents were active in the synagogue and I taught Sunday school. I went out with anybody they suggested, everybody their friends suggested, everybody any relative suggested. Nobody can complain I didn't try and didn't play the field. But nobody came close. Nobody wanted me because of who I was. They wanted me to fulfill their needs, or they were stuck going out because their parents needed them to go out with somebody too. So, but I played the field and made everybody happy. So nobody really complained when we said enough already.
And that's perfect segue, because at this time, Karen is in Canada at university, and she is missing you immensely. And she makes the call to you to ask if you would like to come to Canada to join her. And I leave that to you. What took place then?
We would write letters. In those days, the postal service was much better. We'd write it. Airmail letters had different postage, and it was special paper. It was very, very thin paper. So what we'd do was we'd write very tiny on this very, very thin sheet of paper, a little bit every night, and then we'd get I'd get her letters on a Friday morning. And so I would, in my grade 12 year, I took a college class before school. So I'd go to East LA Junior College for a class. I'd drive home, pick up Mom, so she could have the car the rest of the day. The mail would have come by then. So we go to high school. Mom drops me off, and then I have Karen's letter. And that year I had physics first thing in the morning, and everybody knew class couldn't start until I'd read my letter. And since our instructor had had Karen the year prior, there was no real problems. And I was quiet when I was reading and not talking. So they let me read. And then Friday afternoon, I'd top up my letter, send it off to her. She'd get it Monday or Tuesday, and then send it to me. So it was a week for round trip between Kingston, Ontario, small town, Eastern Ontario, and LA in those days. And we'd been chatting on paper about, kids, having kids. We wanted 4. And I finally got to the point where I said, all this is fine and dandy, but I want to be married first. You have to ask me to marry you first. So she writes, the next week I get this long letter, and tiny little bit on the side says, P.S., will you marry me? So I write back my whole letter. Incidentally, we still have the letters. We have all of our letters for those 2 years. So I write back, P.S., yes. So that's how she asked me to marry her. We saw each other over the summer for 2 months, and then over the Christmas holiday. And the winter of 67, she came home so miserable and lonely and horrible that she said she wouldn't go back without me. And there was a postal strike in Canada, as usual, around that time. And so my dad said, we appreciate all of this, we understand, but you can't go to Canada without being married. We thought they were just trying to give us more hoops to jump through. In our immaturity, we didn't realize Dad needed me to be safe. I had to be legally protected. So what we did was we got online with the, not the chancellor, but admissions department of Queen's University, and I had the catalog, the calendar of courses from Cal State LA, and we talked about the courses I'd taken and my marks, and we planned the rest of my academic year, and Queen's accepted me into second-year honors program, which was not common at all in those days, but I did have good marks. And I was coming up, and though they never admit it, universities do have a quota system, at least in those days. So I checked off female, I checked off Jewish, and I checked off American. So in taking me in, they had 3 boxes checked off. And of course, I'm marrying a medical student. So they felt that they were getting pretty good bang for their buck. And so I finished the year. We announced the engagement that Christmas. My dad was chairman of the school board at this time, and they were very active in the synagogue. And for everyone to realize I was not pregnant, we set the date publicly 9 months ahead of time, so that everyone would know this was not a necessity, and that my parents could hold their heads up and such. Remember, in the 60s, people don't. Anyway, yeah, that's the way it was then.
Just brilliant. And while you were talking, I got goosebumps because I had known about these letters before, but I had not known that both of you had kept them all these years. So the goosebumps just got to me. And in last week's episode with Karen, We mentioned her writing and how I was able to read a chapter of hers, and she's a brilliant writer. And so I'm going to continue to nudge both of you because, as I mentioned before, it's the greatest love story that's never been put down onto paper officially and been released. And nudge, nudge, wink, wink, it needs to be done.
You're not the first who've asked us. That's where she started. Yeah, eventually we want to leave it for the kids anyway, and nieces and nephews. But yeah, they will not be destroyed. Our daughter and son will make a copy for our son, and our daughter will get them eventually.
You get married, you eventually come to Canada, you make Canada your home, and this is where you've been ever since, doing your due purpose and voting correctly every time you have a chance to, of course. But you settle in here. Did you both graduate from university first, or did the children come first? I don't remember.
University first. I got my BA Combined Honors English and History in 71 and my BEd in 72. Karen's MD in 72. We got married at 19 and 20. We had debts. We were, as one friend said, we were poorer than church mice. I fed us on $10 a week in those days. Luckily, I knew how to cook and sew a bit and, do all that stuff. But as long as we had money for a book and, some hamburger or potato, we carried on. The kids came. I got pregnant in 76. So we waited. Because we were on our own, the family was in LA. I'm the eldest of three. So there wasn't a lot of money to go around. We knew we had to do it. Karen's family wasn't interested in us. Any help that might have been there came with too many strings. So we wanted nothing to do with it. And so we needed to wait until we were sufficiently financially stable that we could do this, and that we were farthest enough along in our careers that I'd be able to take a break, because though Karen might have enjoyed being home with the kids, my profession leads one more to be home. Not only did I teach English and history, I'm also a certified special ed teacher at that point. The ESL didn't come for many years. So, and my dad was a specialist in multi-handicap students. So I was the designated mom to stay home, and I wanted to. I never dreamed of doing anything other than being a mom and a teacher. I saw myself as a mother goose for all my life. I started mumming when I was 2.5, when my brother was born, so to speak. My mom was a bit young emotionally, and so I helped raise my siblings. So I never dreamed of anything else.
So to this point, this sounds very idyllic. This sounds very white picket fence and marrying young, but going to university, finishing, deciding to have children when you're financially ready. However, as we know now, Karen had a secret that absolutely would terrify herself to share with the world. When did you begin to have suspicion, or when did you begin to find out more about Karen being Karen and not this younger boy who you met in grade 10 before?
I knew she was, if you remember the little Abner comics, Mr. Metzi Duplique walked around with a cloud over his head. I knew Karen. I'd met Karen's parents, knew them very well. they loved me until I married their son. And then my mother-in-law, I could do no right. But I knew that was her problem. That was her issues. So I thought I knew why Karen was depressed. But I loved her anyway. And I figured we were in this together. I always saw us as a unit. It wasn't her problems or my problems. I had warts too, It was our problems that one or the other of us would bring to the relationship. So I never thought of her having problems. It was her situation that the two of us were going to have to deal with. But as, we're dealing again, I'm thinking it's her parents, but eventually I realized it's more than that. And I knew at the beginning, I thought it was, she was what we call then transvestite, a cross-dresser, just a guy who liked wearing women's clothes. I had never heard of being transgender at this point. I did not know this kind of thing existed. But then I began to realize there was more to her unhappiness than just not being able to dress in women's clothes. So I think we've been married about 20 years before she finally, maybe 25, before she finally fessed up that she was a gal in a guy's body, that from her childhood she thought she might have been an alien. I don't know if she talked about that with you. But yeah, at one point when she was young, maybe about 4, she thought she might have been an alien, but it was always a little girl alien stuck in a boy's body. But it was just destroying her. And I kept doing as much as I could to keep her stable. I walked on eggshells for 25, 30 years, not wanting her to kill herself. I knew about the suicide attempts. I knew that, and when, there were times when a brick wall would just drop over her eyes. My mother-in-law had a habit of, when she'd accuse you or yell at you for something, she'd yell at you for what you were supposed to be replying to her, not what you actually said. And so this is the way Karen grew up. So she'd never have any response. And my line was, "I'm not your mother. I want to hear from you." And you could see her physically shrink inside. And, but I knew that this was not of her choice. I knew that she was staying alive because she loved me. When people say, they love somebody so much that they will die for them, that's nothing. If you can imagine loving somebody so much that despite the pain every day, that you're willing to live for them. That was Karen. That was my Karen. And I knew this. So I hung in there. But it got to the point that all the therapy I was doing for myself, she wouldn't go to therapy. All the therapy I was doing for myself, everything I was doing wasn't helping anymore. I felt like I was a dry husk inside. A pump's got to be primed. And at one point, I'd had it. I'd done every trick I'd read about. I did everything I could find, I could research. I couldn't tell anybody because in those days she'd lose her MD. She'd lose everything. But I couldn't do it anymore. So I had one trick left in my book. I threatened to leave her and take the kids unless she got help. And she finally got help. And I said, I don't need you to transition or do anything else, but you've got to talk to somebody. I can't, no matter what I'm doing, it's wrong. I can't help you anymore. And I can't live on eggshells anymore. So she talked to somebody in Ottawa, by herself first, and then I was brought in later. He was really good, the therapist, initially. He agreed that there was, with us staying away from the in-laws, and he gave us the term destructive parents, and that we'd been right to keep our kids away from them, and that for us to stay away from them. And that made a huge difference. The problem came where he couldn't accept or understand the difference between identity and physical, sex and gender. And he wanted Karen to leave me. And Karen said, no, I can't leave Pam. I'm going to stay married. We have to be together.
The person you were talking to recommended to Karen to leave you?
Yes, because in those days, especially the big mental health clinic in Toronto, there was no concept of you can be a gender identity, lesbian, and physical identity, female. Like the fact that somebody could be not straight and trans. Karen was a lesbian, which is why being in a man's body worked, right? She was attracted to women. But she happened to be a woman attracted to women. But at that time period, the guy, I can't say he was a homophobe, but maybe he was. He couldn't accept that Karen wouldn't leave me, so he cut Karen off from all for future therapy because Karen wasn't straight. She didn't want a guy, she wanted me. And so, but we'd come so far by that time, it was enough. She got the support to get us through where we were. Things calmed down a bit. We knew she'd have to transition eventually. My only worry was that once she transitioned, would she still want me? Because I wasn't sure who she was going to be when she got to be the person who was inside. I hope she still wanted me, but I didn't know. So when it turned out that she was the gal, but she was still wanted me, that's all I cared about. That was all I cared about. I got to keep her. And she wasn't going to kill herself. That's all I cared about.
Thank God for all of that. Thank God for that. Hey, at this time, when did your kids begin to figure that there was something up with their parents and that there was something? Could you, I know that you would try to shelter as much as you can, but kids have questions, kids have wonderment. How were you able to, or how did you deal with the situation when it came to the kids with Karen transitioning and your relationship?
I was able to hang in there and Karen for long enough that this didn't happen until Aviva was in, our eldest Aviva was in high school at this point, and Ian was in the beginning of high school. So in typical, I shouldn't say typical, he was oblivious to anything. We were meeting his needs. He was loved. He was treasured. He knew he was on the autism spectrum. He knew we didn't care. We loved him. He was happy. So, Mom and Dad only existed as far as his needs were. So Aviva, however, had a relationship that one of her friends thought was unusual for a father-daughter relationship with Karen. And so they thought there might have been something, let's put the word inappropriate going on, because it was more like a mother-daughter relationship in some ways than a father-daughter. And so when Aviva got to university, there was somebody on campus with her who transitioned while she was at school. 1 year, I don't remember which way the person went, female to male or male to female, but she'd been dropping hints around the dinner table during visits for a long time. But Karen wasn't ready to come out. It wasn't safe in Ottawa. So Aviva figured it out while she was either in high school, but definitely by university. She'd figured it out. And when Karen finally came out to her, 2000, the kids knew in 2001. We told them first, and then my parents. And Aviva said, "Thank goodness, if you'd hung in there any long, Dad, I would have called you a liar." But so the kids used the terms Daddy or Karen, but female pronouns, because she is their dad. In fact, I have to consciously use a male pronoun when I talk about fathers now, because I was so used to using she for Karen. This is kind of funny. But so Aviva figured it out. Ian, we had to tell. And what we did was with Ian, he's an engineer. And so we explained, so the kids had seen us go through therapy when they were in high school. So they knew that we'd been having issues, but we wanted to stay together. So we went to marriage therapy. And lo and behold, we stayed together. And that was, so as far as, Ian wasn't sure what the issues were, but he knew that, parents were happier and therapy did its job, and, put his mindset that if he has any problems, you find a therapist, and they help you. You go to a podiatrist, a dentist, so that's what therapists are for. So he didn't understand how or why. So we explained the biological phenomenon of how someone becomes transgender, and it's all in utero. It's not a choice you make. And then, okay. So, but you're still my dad. Yeah, that doesn't change. I just happen to now I'm living with another name, and I'm going to look a little different, and I'll be happier. But I'm always your dad.
I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit because you have told me this very cute story in person about, I believe it was your son and the relationship when it comes to kids, about having grandparents and grandpas and grandmas. And I believe it's your son that has an interesting situation.
Oh, yes. Okay. Our son married a single mom, and one of the boys is autistic. And Julian adores us. He likes having these grandmothers. Bridget was left home as a single mom, and she is from Texas and went to Alaska and was adopted by a gay couple who ran a florist shop. in Alaska. And they're her two dads. And so Julian's always had these two dads, these two grandpas. And now he meets us. And so we asked Julian, how do you feel about having these two grandmothers? And he looks at us and he says, well, I already have the grandfathers. And so as far as he's concerned, the family is now properly balanced. He has two of each. The two grandmas on his dad's side, and the grandpas on his mom's side.
Yeah, I giggle. Whenever I've heard you tell that story, I giggle because it's just fantastic. Edmonton plays an important part of your story. And so when I say the word Edmonton to you, what word association do you have with that word?
The government in Ontario, the premier was trying to outcline Klein with the cutbacks. And so Karen's job, she was always going to have a job, but it was getting more and more difficult. And in education, things were getting worse and worse. I was spending more time fighting for the rights of my students than programming. And the two of us had been misfits for a long time in Ontario. We didn't fit in for our own separate reasons. I'm a Westerner. I judge people by who they are, how they behave, not what they look like, nor how much money they make. It's irrelevant. Back east, people are thrown more often in boxes. We had friends there, and some very good ones, but we didn't fit in the psychic space. And Karen had an opportunity to come here to Edmonton for a job. And we'd wanted to move out west for many, many years. And so she came for a job interview, and she got it. And so we moved here, and it was funny. She came back to Ottawa with all this information about Edmonton, theater and music and the Fringe, and half of it was gay stuff about what was going on. And so, we had high hopes that life and stuff was going to be easier, and that she was eventually going to be able to come out. And so we moved.
So at this time, this move opens up a lot for you because Karen can be Karen, and without the backstory where Karen has to explain herself, and you don't have to explain everything because you can both be authentic with your relationship. Now, the story so far has been about Karen and the challenges that she's overcome, and you as being the sidekick partner, perfect partner in many ways. But you also experience hardship when it comes to your health, especially during this time as well. And so we're not just dealing with Karen's transition, moving jobs, but we're talking about your life itself.
So we arrived in Edmonton in 99. Karen came first. She started April 1st. I finished my contract and then flew here July 9. I'm here 4 days, and I'm reading in the newspaper because I want to, learn about my new space and what are we going to do here. And I see this thing about the Fringe. Don't know what a Fringe is, but it sounds like fun and they want volunteers. So I tootle off down to the Arts Barns, and I come back home 4 hours later. And I've been volunteering at the Fringe ever since. But Karen's asking me, do I want to put in my application for teaching? They need spec ed teachers. There's kids in the hall. There's all kinds of things that are right up my alley, but I'm exhausted, physically exhausted. So I do some volunteer work, Grant McEwen, Minerva, They're non-credit courses for seniors. I do Ella, which is U of A, similar program. And I'm meeting people and having fun. The spring of 2001, I have a small lump on the side of my throat. Now, I'm used to allergies and swollen glands all my life. Ottawa has all kinds of nasty things that I reacted to. So I'm healthier here in general, but I have a lump that doesn't hurt and doesn't go away. I've been hired to volunteer for the 2001 Games, World Track and Field Championships, partly because we live down the street from the Butterdome, and I've been asked to be the concierge for the athletes' village at the Butterdome. So that's fine. We're ramping up, and by now I'm feeling strong enough. I'm going to apply to teach in September. So we get everything set, and then we're due to go live on Saturday. On Friday, Karen gets a call from Ohio. My baby sister, who we both had helped raise, was diagnosed with non-smoker's lung cancer. And then Sunday, and we'd seen them last at Passover, which is Easter time, and we knew Lynn wasn't acting the way she normally does. Her personality wasn't quite right. We thought there may be a divorce or other things in the works. The relationship had been sort of not great. We didn't know what the pressures were there, but we knew things weren't right between the two of them. She has 2 young kids at this point. And on Sunday, the Mets are already in her brain. And she was on a palliative thing now. This was 2001. People don't think of non-smokers getting lung cancer. So she'd not been great for about 1.5 years. Okay. So there we are. My sister's got 8 to 9 months to live. The 2 of us help raise. And then, so busy with, track and field stuff. And then at the end of that, my lump still hasn't gone away. And Karen and I look at each other. We've got the letter about Lynn. Now, my mother had been a smoker for many, many years. She stopped when she was pregnant, but then started after that again. She finally stopped when Lynn was about 1 year old, so I was about 7 or 8 at this point. And I'm currently 51 or 52. 52 because it's 2001. Okay, so Karen's working at the Cross, so we go in and get a biopsy. I finish the games and start working at the Fringe. And I get a call from the Cross saying, we'll see you Monday. Can you come in Monday? We've got your biopsy results. And it turned out to be cancer in my right tonsil. Again, we're not sure why. Non-smoker, non-drinker, not male, not Asian, and not some other thing. Who usually gets these things. But I've got it. They might have gone a little bit less aggressively, but with my sister dying of non-smoker's lung cancer, they scheduled me for surgery. September, so this is August. I'm scheduled for surgery September 13th. Okay, about then. So they can get it out. Well, that's September 13th, the month, 2001. All right. 9/11 happens. And my surgeon is in Quebec City on a conference. So the surgery's held off, of course. I eventually have a 10.5-hour surgery the end of September. They feel they get it. They got it all. But I'm still going to have radiation therapy to make sure. And then I end up being a guest at the Cross inpatient for 7 weeks because I can't swallow, I can't eat. Radiation gives me lockjaw, in effect. So they put a tube in. And so anyway, yeah. So I go into the Cross with a husband. Karen, at this point, is beside herself and decides that she can't try to pretend to be a guy anymore. And so while I'm in the hospital, she transitions. So I go into the hospital with a husband, I come out with a wife. And that was the winter of 2001, 2002. And I'm given 50% chance to live 3 years, even with the successful surgery and radiation, because they don't know. So Karen works 1 more year at the Cross, and then it's enough cancer. Lynn has by now passed away. I'm in limbo, I'm doing great, but who knows? So she leaves the Cross and works part-time at a radiology clinic so she can spend more time with me. I continue to get healthier and stronger, and I tell her, go back to work full-time. I will not be in a classroom anymore. You can't control grade 9s with half a throat. I didn't need a microphone in those days without having to yell. I just could raise the voice. And I don't have the energy either. So she went back to work eventually full time. And it's now 20 years later.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack from all of that. So here it is. You two are beginning a new life in Edmonton. You have your own health issues that are taking place. So it's not just focused on Karen, and now Karen is now living our authentic self. Edmonton appears to be a great place because you're able to volunteer. You find the Edmonton Fringe Festival, which is a brilliant, brilliant festival every year. Yet, perhaps you haven't met the chosen family as much yet, or the chosen family that's to come. You look 20 years later and you've got all these nephews and a few nieces, but you've got a shit ton of nephews now here in this city. So when did you start meeting these nephews, and quote unquote nephews, because she's got a whole heck of a lot of gay men in her life as well. So, the junction was around at that point, but drag shows and the community. When did both of you start coming into the Edmonton gay LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, the alphabet soup community, as I call it. Karen knew I needed some support, and we needed to meet people. And I love square dancing, and I needed exercise. So we found so I got out of the Cross in February, and Karen's doing research and stuff, and she discovers a gay square dancing group. So we joined that in September. We meet Larry and Dwayne. We meet Denise and Jim. We meet another Jim. I shouldn't be saying names because people will be annoyed that I don't remember them.
There's a lot of gyms in Edmonton. There's a lot of gyms, so that's okay.
All kinds of incredible people. We meet Cam and Mike, for those of you who remember them. And we meet all these incredible guys. There was one other lesbian couple there, Holly and Cindy, who have since returned to the States. Other than that, it was the guys. And we started doing some more things with the LGBT community, but it was basically that square dance group in September. And from there, it exploded. It blossomed. I like to use that. It blossomed, and we met. That's how we met you guys. You know, people would introduce us to people, and it was just fabulous. I credit it with square dancing. So we started with the community in September 2002, and it's gone from there.
We've never recovered since having Pam and Karen in our life.
Thank goodness. May you never do so.
We couldn't, and we never want to recover. I met both of you through the Junction, which was a place here in Edmonton that was a fantastic hangout spot for the community. Before that, it was Boots and Saddles. Drag shows, specifically. Drag shows, a fantastic way to be out and about in the community, that charity aspect of itself. You yourself, I don't believe, have ever been put into a type of drag persona, and I've never heard you ever want to be on stage in drag itself, but drag has been very important for you, as well as Karen, in this journey of building your chosen family. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how important drag has been for both of you?
It's been very important. First of all, I want to correct you, though I've not been in drag per se, I have been on stage participating in other people's skits, notably Jeff's Keeper of the House from Les Mis. I'm in the background back there. I've done some other stuff as well, though I have no problem with being in costume and going on stage, because I was involved with theater and such. And when you're a teacher, I mean, it's more theatrics, as you know. So though I've never done it like that, I have definitely participated on stage in costume. Through Dwayne and Larry, we met Layaway, we met everybody else. That's how we got into drag. Friends of friends wanted to do this, and they wanted us to come and support them. And so why not? It sounds like fun, so let's go see it. And it was an absolute hoot. It's a great thing to do. I love the charity aspect of it. The teacher and parent in me loves what drag does to people who have been stuck inside a shell, imprisoned. They may not be transgender, but they've not been able to have their true selves come out. So drag is a wonderful way to play around with identity, play around with finding yourself, having fun, doing something to raise money for other people. It's just a lovely form of entertainment. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, but when my dad used to go to conferences in San Francisco for the school board, he'd come back and say, I can never pay to see Judy Garland in person. I can't afford that. But there are shows there that I can see a female impersonator do a Judy Garland show. And when you guys are old enough, you're going to come with me. And you'll see they're just wonderful. So Dad never used the word drag, but he was definitely familiar with drag shows. And so he thought they were wonderful ideas, great entertainment. This is old-fashioned classical, stuff. And so that was when I realized that's what my dad was talking about. Oh, okay, that sounds neat. And but yeah, when Layaway was the first person I met as a drag queen, as a person, and she needed supporters for her election, so away we go. And that was then, and this is now, and we think even more highly of it now. So yeah, I think drag is one of the best. It's as good as sliced bread, if not better. I mean, it does so much good for the person doing it. It's wonderful entertainment. It's I think it's fabulous.
More word association. What do the words chosen family mean to you?
Safety, love, acceptance.
Both Karen and yourself have come to Edmonton. Karen's able to be her authentic self. You're finding the support within the community as a cancer survivor, as you've recovered, as well as one can during a situation like that. You found a chosen family. Your kids during this case. One kid's in Alaska. How are they feeling about their moms or mom and dad being in Edmonton? How are they feeling during this time?
Aviva came to visit us once. Ian didn't come until he moved, but we introduced them to our support system, all you guys, and they were just so delighted with how well we were being looked after and taken care of that they stopped being worried about us. So they were just tickled pink that we were so happy. They saw our supports, they met everybody, and they were fine with it once they'd met everybody. So they're quite pleased, and they know that we can't live in either place, and right here we're midway between the two of them, and it suits us perfectly, and we're happy here. So and they like you all.
Do you remember the time, or is it just something that came naturally, when you were able to look at Karen and not worry anymore, or just know that, or be able to take that deep breath, let it out, and just go, we're going to be okay?
That was the best way. It was incremental. I had faith that we'd make there. Once I knew I was going to be okay, I knew she was going to be okay, because I am the linchpin. And I was going to live. She had her support. She felt loved and treasured. She felt seen as the person she was, and that's so important, to be seen. And she was loved after being seen, and by all you guys. And we miss our kids desperately. But you guys do a damn good job of, being there for us. And everybody has their own special place. And because of the support system, Karen's not worried about me. I see her being loved and being able to accept it. Because in the past, she found part of the problem I found, she couldn't accept others accepting her because she didn't believe they really saw her. She thought they were accepting an image that they had superimposed on her. And, but here she feels seen for who she is and accepted that way, warts and all. much she doesn't have any, but you know what I mean. So yeah, so it was incremental. And as Karen, gradually discovered, her style and her hair and how she wanted to present. And of course, there's a difference between passing and presenting. And, she's a 73, I guess, now this month. If I'm 72, she'll be 73-year-old gal. I mean, who looks really good, but, you don't want people to think anything else other than seeing this old 73-year-old walking down the road, You want no one to take a second look. You just want them to keep going, But that takes a while to find your personal sense of style that is appropriate for your size, your shape, your age, your profession, everything. And at the same time, it has to reflect who you are inside. And if you're growing up as somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to experiment with that sometimes takes a while to do afterwards. But, because Karen had me, and, and I understood from her point of view, as well as, I'm a good mirror, she was able to get to that spot a lot faster than many others are. So most people, don't even know she was anything other than who she is now.
The best thing that we can do for our transgender community members would the ideal thing for our transgender community is to have their own personal Pam to be part of their lives, of course. But you are a rare woman of immense pride and love and all the other words from the thesaurus to describe a woman of excellence like yourself. What would you say to anyone who's listening today who understands that they are transgender, going through the process or scared to open those doors? Are there words of advice that you would like to share with that young man, that young woman?
It goes along the same thing I tell kids who are coming out for being gay. First of all, you have to be safe. Your personal safety is utmost. Now, that also means you got to be here, though. So find somebody you can talk to. Nowadays, there are therapists who understand the difference between sex and gender, and that, or a friend. And listen to them. They value you. They're not lying to you when they say things that they love you. It's true. It's real. Do little things. I know a little thing isn't the same as the whole thing, but sometimes it's enough to help you hang in there until you can get to a safe place and you can be who you need to be, who you are, so you can live your truth. But there is professional help out there, and believe people when they say they love you. And a lot of times I found that Karen didn't believe because she started out not being able to believe. And so, and even having me, it was so hard. So find somebody you can trust and get professional help. And do believe people when they say, I love you.
One of the best times of my entire life was being able to be there at your 50th wedding anniversary and have your family, your blood family, and your chosen family there. And it was a huge room. And to be able to hear both of you speak to all of us and sharing and spreading your love. And of course, us being able to give that to you both in return. Before we finish the interview today, is there anything that you would like to just to tell our listeners about maybe something that we didn't cover today, or just something that you want to leave everyone knowing?
At the moment, I can't think of anything. If anyone, as you go through this, take a look and see if there's something that you or Jerry, can think of. I can't think of anything at the moment.
We've covered a lot. We've covered a lot of everything, and what's great is that last week we were able to introduce everyone to Karen. Today, Pam, and then next week here on Tales of the LGBTQ plus, both Pam and Karen together to talk both at the same time, to share stories with each other. You will get to hear how they finish each other's sentences. You just kind of will have to get used to that next week, how they both will just continue on with each other's sentence and back and forth. But that's next week on Tales of the LGBTQ plus. Pam, I finished off last week's episode with Karen, and saying something very similar to you. Of everything that I've done in the world, where I've gone, and where I've been, the best thing that's ever happened to me is to have been able to find both of you, and for both of you to be part of what has become my chosen family. I adore both of you immensely. It's unconditional love. And I cannot wait until this pandemic is over so all of us can get back to our lives where we can hug and hold and love and just sit with each other in the sun, hold hands, and just resume again. Because we're all building the greatest story that's never been put down on paper. And I'm so honored to be a small footnote in your lives, and I'm a blessed man because of it. I'm going to wrap up because I'm going to have a good hearty cry here afterwards.
I'm always good at the one thing, me and Columbo. I couldn't do this without feeling the love and support that the two of us have had here. We feel it. It's come through in spades. My health still is not great, but I've got to keep going because we feel so much love, bubble wrap, whatever, that without you guys, we couldn't do this. So I thank you for supporting us unconditionally and making us strong so we can keep going too, kiddo.
150% at all times. Okay, I'm going to turn into a puddle here soon, so let's wrap it up here. So on behalf of Pam, I want to thank all of you for listening to our conversation today. Stay tuned for next week when we add more to this story. Until next time, please be good and always text when you get home. Until next time.